Hello, everyone. Okay, so we all said, okay, hi, Carl. So I'm going to welcome Carl, who has just written book on. Let me open the book so that I can talk you a book in details better way. So the Great Acceleration, the race to retail resilience. So in the beginning, I'm going to start with some questions. So tell about Carl Boutet. He is one of the the high 100 most influential people in the world who is in the retail business. He is the man behind the Studio RX, and he's engaged in so much media and so much things. And then with the now the digital and the great restoration, he's one of the man who can tell you what's going to happen and how we can cope up with those changes for the retail e-commerce, and not only retail and e-commerce, most other businesses as well. It is affecting financial institution, retailing, real estate, and the way people we connect with each other, and the way we connect with the customer, and then the how the customer connect with each other. So everything is being changed, and it has been changed since 2005-10, but now with the COVID, last 2020 has been the greatest accelerator. So this book deals about how it is changing the world, how it's changing retail, and then how the company are coping up with the changes. So, Carl, just a brief about your book, like how it can help the retailers to understand what they need to understand, what is the most important things, because everybody knows we have to go online, right?
Hmm.
But it's not enough. Like they will not only they going putting your business online, it is whole ecosystem, whole infrastructure is going to change over. So, what is the most beginning things any retailer or any business to begin with?
Well, first, thanks for having me, Sunil. Glad we got an opportunity to reconnect. You and I, we did something like we did sort of a great acceleration event last summer, which feels already like a lifetime ago when we were
I
doing
know, yeah.
Nepal, like the great accelerator. And we were with our friends from Draz and Sastodil, and that already seems like a long time ago.
Yeah,
And that's what the acceleration in a lot of ways is. It's just the compression of time and how um, in context of digital, uh, the digital adoption and the digital enablement that is being accelerated, uh, what you're referring to beyond retail. And first of all, let's just say for me that I have a very broad definition of retail. Anything that's consumer facing for me has the same dynamic. If you're hospitality, entertainment, real estate, I mean, they're all the same sort of behaviors that you're or shifts in behaviors that we're looking at, and why the word acceleration was on everybody's lips at the couple of weeks into the first lockdowns in the spring of 2020 was because these were all trends, as you well said, Sunil, that were already playing out. We knew that our lives were going to become more digitally enabled, that there's going to be more and more digital touch points, not to replace physical, to make physical better, but we'll get to that a bit later. But the idea was we were heading in this direction already. Especially in markets that went into lockdown, it became very obvious that we hadn't gone fast enough, that uh, the digital tools that we needed, the digital infrastructure. And I remember in our conference in Nepal, how we talked about, for instance, just digital payment, the explosion of digital payment processing in markets, in emerging markets like Nepal. That's what the great acceleration is. We knew that we were going to get there one day. We just thought we were going to get there 5, 10 plus years from now. Now, in the spring of 2020, we got there in 5 to 10 weeks in a lot of cases. Did it stay there? Not necessarily. Some behaviors, yes, probably like digital payment. I think those are stickier. Uh, Buying all our groceries online probably didn't stay, but there's a lot more continued shopping, grocery shopping online than there was pre-pandemic, but it's not the same level it was during the first wave of lockdown. So for me, the great acceleration was in many ways sort of this portal into the future where we sort of saw 5, 10 years out what it was going to look like. and then sort of things completely closed back up, and it closed back up, and we're like, the organizations, the retailers, the businesses were all like, ooh, that was really scary. How do we better prepare for this? Because we're going to get there more quickly now than we first thought. And that's the race to resilience. The subtitle of the book is how do we get to this place where we're going to be stronger, both digitally and physically, for whatever else is to come. Because unfortunately, I think we're not done with these sort of challenges. I think we've got more digital and physical challenges ahead of us. So the book is really a launch of sorts for the idea that we're going towards this 50-50 world, and it just sort of puts the baseline, some frameworks and some ideas that we can unpack here as we go along. But the idea is this is going to be continually evolving. So the book is just something that I put out there to create the conversation, and now we're going to be building on that conversation through a subscription service and some other things that I'm going to be doing, because quite honestly, I'm not a big fan of books right now. I find them very static. I find that in a world that's accelerating, it's very hard to put out a book that's going to be relevant still 6 months from
Yes.
now. So for me, the idea is the book is the launch of something that's going to be more iterative.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was writing a book about retail management in Nepal before the COVID. I even said that this is going to be released, and then now after the COVID hit, then we completely the way we think about retail has changed. I cannot say, okay, draw the people at your store, right? It's going to be completely false. And then the country opened back, then they shut down again. So I have to write re-modifying book and book. So it
Yeah.
was like 500 pages now got down to 300. Now it is broken in two parts, right? One gonna be for the MBA students, which is basically a textbook, and another one is going to be the research which we have done in Nepal, right? So that's like one book parted into
Yeah.
two parts.
You have to almost keep updating the chapters and keep moving them along, and that is the challenge. And but if you're doing a theory, a book for academics, it's a bit different. The frameworks could be a little, will probably live on a bit better. Actually, I introduced the term, the Great Acceleration, the first time at my friend Steve Dennis's book launch back in April 2020. And he had to rewrite a second book within a year too, because although the frameworks were still pretty much the same, the way that we apply them,
It's different.
that's what's sort of changing. And in my book, there's a section that is, as you saw, dedicated to the data. So if you're going to be presenting data ages very quickly in today's world. And it's fluctuating more and more. So to be able to roll that out, maintain the tracking that we need to maintain to stay on top of it, enlarge it, and especially one of my biggest struggles is the definitions are always emerging. So what is e-commerce in 2021? It's not the same thing as it was in 2015, and definitely not the same thing it was when Amazon started selling books online. So even how we shift from the idea of e-commerce that is a very sort of um, enclosed concept of I buy something, I'm on my phone on my couch, I buy something, and the day after, a couple of days after, there's a box at my door. That's one definition of e-commerce. But digitally enabled commerce, which is really what e-commerce should be, is a much broader idea of I'm on my couch, I hit a button, and I drive to my Canadian Tire store and pick up a curbside, or I drive to my smart locker and enter a code and pull something out of a smart locker. Or soon, I just saw before we came on the call, Walmart's a big investment in drone delivery. Soon it might be I'm sitting on my couch, hit a button, and there's a drone that's going to show up and drop something in my backyard. And those are just very simple explain, without even getting into all the augmented reality, virtual reality commerce that we're going to be doing. Is that e-commerce? Is that something else? So that just keeps on running. And that's part of the 50-50 that we're going to, which is the race to resilience.
Okay. So like we talk about the acceleration digital, how fast it is moving. We said it's gonna. You mentioned in the book it's gonna take 5 to 10 years for the changeover, right? And it happened in 10 weeks, right? So it's too fast, too soon. So like, what do you think? Like how companies are coping with that? Like, is a lot of time you do the things and the crack appears later on, right? So how?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you are rushing up the things, and then you find out no, it is not. Like, and you invest some money in technology and you're
Yeah.
training so many things, and after 6 months, you realize it is not the way it's supposed to be. So the what like it's already started to see the cracks in the system
Yeah.
ecosystem.
Well, we saw
How
the cracks. I mean, just in logistics and supply chain, right? I mean, they've been massive. The when I said 5 to 10 weeks, it took 5 to 10 weeks to do what we were expecting in 5 to 10 years. Again, that wasn't permanent. Thank God, because we'd be in real trouble. Um, so the data points that I was looking at well, look at the one we had in Nepal, where they said we went from less than 5% digital, financial transactions, everything was cash, to over 50% in a matter of what 2 months or something like that. So in maybe less than 8 weeks, that the people from Duraz and Sasto deal were saying. That's a significant thing. I also talk about when I was involved in an event for Canada Post with the new chief operating officer who just joined Canada Post as their chief operating officer, who came, thank God, from Asia, where he led DHL's e-commerce group, and so he knew what scale looked like. And he was talking about when he started the job at the beginning of 2020, had a 10-year plan to ramp up parcel delivery and basically hit the 2029 numbers that he was expecting in May of 2020. So, I mean, it didn't maintain at that level. Obviously, sort of settled back down. But now, what do you think, or think of the grocery stores? Our grocery stores here in Canada. So now there was like 3 week delay to get a grocery order online. I mean, they were totally caught off guard. So now they're pushing ahead a lot of their investments, like Canada Post as well. They're pushing ahead their investments. The things that they were going to do in 3, 5, 7 years are now pushing up to this year, 3 years. Like they've had to compress everything. That's really the acceleration, where the investments have to go to make sure that we can support this rapid move, so we don't get caught off guard so much again. And that also applies to making sure the digital strengths are matching that as well, not just infrastructure and logistics and supply chain, but just the whole digital infrastructure is because we're seeing a lot of frailties just in the basic digital structure right now. So
yeah, okay. So like starting with the 2020, then with the COVID and so much things change over. Now the question is that now with the vaccinations, people, if look at the U.S. market, even you look in. Not, I'm not talking about Nepal. Here in Canada, like people are
mm-hmm,
even go back to the store and they want to
mm-hmm,
shop. People
mm-hmm.
start, even the clubhouse is getting popular because people are don't want to see too much, right? They say just
Yeah.
listening is enough, right? So with so much transformation, so much investment in the technology, now people are going back to basic. Like they want to go to the store, they want to touch the thing. So
Yeah.
how it's gonna merge? Like how it's gonna like how the retailers need to understand that people are gonna come back. You just saw a mall, one Gucci store in Korea. It's completely the way you have seen in the news. It completely with the technology, so much technology, in
Mm-hmm,
the way they are building the malls with so much like
mm-hmm.
things to look over. So with the retail changing over, not only the shopping with different ambience. So how these two things gonna merge? How it's gonna like
Yeah, it's a great point. And that's why the core concept of the race to resilience is, if you can aim for a 50-50 world where your organization, your business is as comfortable dealing in a physical as it is dealing in a digital, then you're going to be in a much better position, because as we don't know how things are going to sort of shift. Right now it's 80-20 or 75-25 physical for 75-25 for digital. And with that, we got a good bump up. It was more like 80-20 before that, and we're going to keep going. If you're just looking at it in pure e-commerce terms, I'm not even talking about digitally enabled. I'm just talking about sort of traditional e-commerce versus traditional physical commerce. and those things. So if you aim for that 50-50, you're preparing your organization for a world that is going to be equal in both sides. What's really interesting is once you get there, they're going to be so ingrained together, and we're going to stop talking about them as being so separate as we've been doing all the time, saying, okay, this is digital, this is physical. Those differences are going to be less and less relevant, except maybe for logistics. But apart from that, everything else is going to be more and more blended. So the organization culture is going to have to change. The way that we measure success is going to, i.e. the KPIs and these things are going to have to evolve as well. So it's all those things are going to be happening at the same time. And it's a very stressful but exciting time for commerce, because it creates, I opened the book with the famous Churchill quote, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. Because we
Yes.
know that there's a lot of organizations that were stuck in an inertia. They had troubles driving change initiatives, so they were very much staying with their legacy and their status quo, and they needed this to sort of provoke the change, to reallocate resources, change the team dynamics, get everybody to come together and say something as simple as curbside pickup requires pretty much everybody coming together on front end, back end, storefront, distribution center, the e-commerce, physical merchandising. Everybody's got to sort of plow in and say, how do we make curbside work? So here's a perfect example of a sort of what we take for granted as being pretty simple from a customer's perspective. But if you've worked in retail, you know how complicated executing on curbside. The least of the problem is the website. You know, it's everything that happens after the customer says, yeah, okay, I want to come pick this up at your store, in front of the store. That's where the real challenge starts. So that pulls all the team together. New organizational culture. How we measure success. How do we attribute success? All these things are all but have to be rethought.
Yeah, I went to a gas station, Esso gas station in Oakville, and then they have the DoorDash now. So somebody orders in the DoorDash, and
Mhm.
I was, I work in the past. I worked in the gas station for like a year. Then I know like how the crazy it gets sometime, right?
Yeah.
So I saw the cashier. He was very stressed out. I said, "What happened?" He said, "I have ordered from the DoorDash, and there are like six, seven things, and he have no idea what is that. Like even you can't give somebody order Coke, you cannot give the Diet Coke, right? He got to find the right stuff. Maybe he's on the cooler back somewhere, but he was like, "What I'm gonna do?" Right? So exactly, we just talk about that. It is not only ordering over the internet. It's a
Who
finding
would have
product.
thought you could get an ice cream cone delivered to your house in 15 minutes?
I know,
I
yeah.
mean, think about that. I interviewed the CEO of Chocolat Favori a couple of weeks ago for an event, and we were talking about that. They had to pivot. It wasn't even really even in their, they weren't even thinking about it pre-COVID. They were a destination. They still are. People like to go there because it's a beautiful experience. But some people just want the ice cream cone, without having to drive to the. So he said, now we have 15-minute delivery of an ice cream cone. And I know I have other, in other parts, and that's because of services like DoorDash. Here in Montreal, they announced this week that Instacart is going to be launching as well. So there's obviously, these are all part of the acceleration. And the other side of the acceleration, Sanil. So we have the whole side that we've been talking about that is more is being provoked by the lockdown, by being provoked by new consumer behaviors, where I'm more comfortable ordering my ice cream using my telephone than I maybe would have been a year and a half ago. But there's a whole other side of the technology companies, and in that I include Instacart and these that are super well financed. They got a lot of capital to subsidize these new behaviors and make sure that we don't go back as quickly to 100% of the time buying our ice cream at the ice cream shop. Maybe we're going to go to 75% of the time at the ice cream shop, but it'd still be a 25% where I'm going to, I'm happy watching my movie at home and I don't really feel like going out to get, but I feel like an ice cream and it's going to come to me. So, these are the behaviors that the Instacarts, the Shopify's, the Microsofts, obviously the Amazons, and all these are going to want to build upon. And we're seeing already massive investments from these organizations. When you look at Shopify this week, it made a big investment in Stripe. I mean, these are all things like this is big, big money. So, let's look at the top 10 most well-funded companies by according to market cap, and you'll see that 9 of them are technology companies that have everything to gain from us further digitizing the way we purchase, we consume, we engage. So what do you think they're going to do? They're just going to make sure they don't want to lose this momentum. They want to see their companies continue to thrive, like we've seen, and that's why they're in the top 10 right now. And so they're going to be investing, and they have that mindset as well, where they love to reinvest all their gains and just keep pushing the innovation and the capabilities of the technology, so that the consumer is going to be just, it's going to become more and more part of what they do, just because it's so accessible, affordable, effective, efficient, all these things, because they have all the money to make it that way.
Yeah, exactly. So like best example is like when you have a restaurant and then we see here they have their own website, where they have their social media, Facebook, whatever, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when they have the app, people order through the Uber, right, or through the.
Yeah.
So you can't say, okay, I'm not going to go on over each side. You have to be there, otherwise, nobody gonna go to your website and buy it there.
Well,
So
and you raise an important point there. So, to what point do we want to be dependent on these third parties? Because there's a lot of downsides to that, including, if anything, just the cost. At the beginning of the pandemic, I remember a lot of articles coming out about how these restaurants had to quickly pivot to these services. And at the end of the month, they were looking, by the time these services were taking a 30% cut, I mean, they were like, that's my whole margin they're taking. So am I just doing this to stay, basically keep the business break even if I'm lucky? And a lot of them weren't even break even. But there's other businesses that have, sort of are rethinking their whole value proposition around this now, saying, I don't need the big dining room anymore. And dining rooms are expensive because I have to staff them and this and that. Maybe I still want to offer a bit of a dining room for that part of the experience, but now you see they've sort of taken the other half of the dining room and have made it a special, like for lanes. Okay, if you're Uber Eats, you go there, DoorDash, you go there, and they have it. So they've optimized for that environment. I'm still a bit skeptical, because I'm always, my first reflex is always to wonder what they're going to do with the data, what these third parties are going to do with all the data that they're gathering, and at what point do they become their own customers because they have enough data and all the money in the world to do whatever they want to do, and decide they don't need to be delivering other people's stuff. They could just start delivering their own stuff and make a lot more money. But that's a whole different topic. But all to say that, yes, these are all new behaviors, and it'll be interesting to see, first of all, who comes out of this. You're in Toronto, your things are starting to reopen. A lot of restaurants won't be reopening, or some, as the money runs out, the government subsidies run out. We'll see where that goes. We'll see where the economy goes. There's still a lot of question marks around that too. How we're gonna make it out of this in terms of economic fallout. Is it going to be just all good times, or is there going to be a price to pay at some point for all this injection of money? So there's still a lot of variables, and that's why the book is just the beginning of something, because we're going to keep building on this and adjusting as these new factors come into play. If inflation stays high, if jobless rates stay low, if supply chains remain broken, these are all things that we have to take into account, and that we need to keep adjusting and iterating the concepts towards. But it doesn't change the fundamentals of the frameworks, but it just changes how we apply them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have a business. You can say, okay, COVID is over. I'm gonna be all same back to same school. No, it's so.
But there's still a lot of people that think like that. So that's sort of, oh, I'm just waiting. I'm just, my business has been struggling, but it's all COVID's had very, a big back on it. It's been carrying a lot of things on its back, COVID. And a lot of businesses like, well, as soon as COVID's done, I'll be fine. And now they're reopening, like, well, staff don't want to come work for me anymore. What's going on? Where's my staff? I can't hire anybody anymore. Or where are my clients? I thought they were all going to come running back as soon as I opened my doors. No, they've developed new habits. There's a lot of things. So there's some businesses, the interesting thing about the Great Acceleration versus the Great Recession. So I have the three greats: depression, recession, and acceleration. The last two greats, everybody lost. It was economic hardship for everyone, pretty much equally. Now with the great acceleration, why it's a bit different, and it has, is that there are some real winners. There's some people they've used this opportunity to restructure, to streamline, to improve their efficiencies, again, improve their asset allocation, downsize if they had too many stores. If they thought, if their 5-year plan was to shut down a third of their stores, they got to do that in 1 year. They got to shut down because they were saying they were just waiting for their leases to run out. And through COVID, they put themselves under protection and creditor protection, and were able to negotiate out of all those quote unquote bad leases, or at least the leases that weren't working for them like they should. So it's created, you have this class of people that of businesses that are going to come out of, are already coming out of this flying. And then the ones that were, to your point just now, resisting the change, waiting for things to go back the way they were, it's just a question. This is all public health related. So as soon as the public health is okay, I'll be okay. Are probably going to have a really hard lesson waiting for them.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, like we work from home now mostly, right? Usually we go in the morning, then have a coffee at Tim Hortons and have some bagel, right? Now you're staying home, you're not gonna go out, right? It's changing so. Even I came back in Canada in November, right? So
Mhm.
this 7 8 months, I've driven my car for like 3,500 kilometer, right? Like
That's crazy, right? Well, and which is a good thing, because there's a shortage of cars too, by the way. So keep your car as much long as you can, because getting a new one is going to be really hard. And even getting a used one, apparently you're going to pay a lot more money for it now than you would have before
yeah,
COVID. So these are all externalities. But you bring up an interesting point, and we did I did a roundtable a couple of months ago with the director of the Urban Studies School at McGill here in Montreal, and along with some other leaders in who work in commercial real estate and are very involved with downtown cores that are dependent on office occupation, and kind of wondering what this future is of these empty office towers. Quite often, right now they're 80% empty, these office towers. So the idea is they're not going to remain 80% empty. We're already starting to see this week a lot of pressure saying, okay, people, because here in Montreal, for instance, since Monday, it's preferred that you work from home, but it's no longer imposed. So it'll be interesting to see. But there's a real dichotomy, or I shouldn't say dichotomy, probably a better word, a disconnect between the perceptions of the business owners and the property owners and the people, the workers, because they were saying that I think only 4% of they did a survey, only 4% of employers were going to tolerate 100% work from home.
yeah.
And we know that's not the majority. People don't want to go to 100% work from home. It's going to go hybrid, but they at least want to know. But there is still, like, apparently in this study, and I found that number very high, but I think it was between 30 and 40% of people were hoping to be 100% work from home. From 4 to 30, 40%, there's a big delta there. But I think where we're going to land, and where the professor in his research said, first of all, again, it's an acceleration. So there was already a trend afoot pre-COVID. Work from home was becoming a 1 day a week thing. Now it's probably going to become a 2 to 3 day a week thing. It's not going to be 100%. But still, if you take 40% of the capacity or the occupation out of the capacity, there's big economic impacts with those bagels and coffees that aren't going to be had in 2 or 3 days a week. Still, even though you're going in 1 or 2 days because you still want to go into the office, you still want to socialize. There's still some productivity needs around gains to be had of people sort of connecting and being in person. And I think there's a lot of parallels actually between that dynamic, the office dynamic, and the retail dynamic, because I think you're going to see the same sort of mixes of virtual and physical. I think there's a lot of parallels between those two realities of working from an office and buying in a store versus working from home and buying online. There's obviously some clear correlations there.
Yeah, we're gonna have some change, but it's not gonna change everything. But we're gonna have to mix everything. When we remember when we have like the Netflix or Amazon or YouTube ran over, then they said no, nobody gonna go theater and watch movie, right? Now they have to start building better movies, which is more visible in like in Avengers, which you see in the at home, you're not gonna like it. When you see in the
Yeah.
theater, it's completely different, right? So every business, everything they change that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No, again, the ones that were innovating, the ones that were already in the right direction to invest in their infrastructure to build a beautiful theater with, you know, with service to your chair, that would they bring you, those probably going to be okay. Now the old dirty theater that hasn't been, the chairs haven't been changed in 20 years, and the screens is not, the sound and the screens aren't that great. People are going to say, I'm going to be just as happy to stay. I got used to watching movies, more movies at home. So again, a hybrid model. It's nothing's going to be absolute. It's all, there's all going to be these variances. I think the only thing that's clear is that we're not going back to 100% of the way things were before, but nor are we staying 100% the way that things have been for the last 12 months. So we need to prepare for a world that's more and more sort of an equilibrium between the two. And that's why that parity or equilibrium, that 50% for me rule is more almost symbolic to say if I'm heading for that, nobody's going to land exactly there. Obviously, the idea is if that's sort of your destination and you land somewhere in the range of, chances are you're going to be in a better position than if you sort of either stay the way you were, which we know doesn't work, or you're saying forget about, you know, physical, it's finished, I don't want to do anything physical anymore because people don't want physical, everybody just wants digital, and I'm closing all my stores, I'm closing all my theaters, I'm closing any sort of physical in space, and I'm going 100% digital. I wouldn't be recommending that anymore either, because I think you're exposing yourself to other problems that we're seeing, you know, with hacks and ransomware and all these, you know, cyber attacks. I mean,
yes.
you still want to be, and just the fact that for brand, we know that you need the physical to complement the digital. If you're going to have some sort of brand that's going to uh, engage consumers beyond just the transaction. So when companies like Warby Parker, who are sort of the original gangsters of direct to consumer digital brand, like open stores, they made the announcement they're actually doubling down. There's going to be a great opportunity for them to get great locations as some of the stores, other store chains had to close. So they're going to be able to probably negotiate better terms. And they're saying we're actually opening 50 new stores. We're not, you know, they were the best equipped to deal with the digital, but they're not saying, okay, we're just going to stick to that. We are investing in physical. So that's the 50-50. I think that's a perfect, you know, another good example.
But with the computer, with computer, like with the website, there's a problem, right? So when you go to some store, there's a human connection. You get used to it. You want to go there. When you buy on the internet, something goes wrong, something you don't like. The switching is like 30 seconds. You're going to just go to another website. You find the same stuff on the same price. And there
Yeah,
is,
well, I mean, yeah, you need to have good, so, and even in store, you need to have good service, right? So it's not just opening a store, it's making sure that you're able to attract the right talent. They have to be, which is really difficult in the environment right now, in the employment environment we have, where it's the job, you know, the retail workforce is hard to bring back for all sorts of reasons. And you're seeing this all over the world. It's not just the Canadian problem. It's something that we're facing everywhere. I mean, I went by a Tim Hortons yesterday, so at 4 o'clock in the afternoon here just in a suburb of Montreal, it was closed. No, and this wasn't an old Tim Hortons. It was like a relatively new one, closed because they had no staff. You know, that's, you think about these sort of environments. So you need to be able to attract. My friend Vibu, who's in the book, who is the founder or co-founder of Beta, which is a very they're a very progressive retail concept. It monetizes usually more the engagement than the transaction. They don't go into much of his business model. He announced this week that he was increasing his base pay to $20 an hour. That was, you know, and you're getting automatic raises every 3 months for as long as you stay with the company. There's no cap. You know,
yeah.
so because he recognizes, you know, if you're going to be paying people $13 an hour, you're going to have a hard time attracting passionate, engaged uh, uh, talent that is going to make a difference to the customer. To have
Yeah.
just somebody that's able to stand in the space and sort of point you to something is not going to be good enough anymore. And that's be it physical or digital. So that's the expectations are going to be higher and higher, and it's makes the business tougher and tougher.
So we talk about, there's a topic about the data, right? So like previously we look at the data from like 10 years or maybe in Christmas sales. So and then we base the decision on the data, right? So okay, we sold this much, like
Yeah.
50,000 pieces, now we're gonna have 60,000. Now with so much social influence, so much like information, and so much people are changing our minds. So how did like the businesses kind of like you saw 1 year, right, when Ronaldo moving over the 1-2 barrel, the bring down
Yeah.
4 billion. So like every small event changing the whole company's perspective, right? So small one
Well, let's just start with obviously a pandemic. So we do a lot of work in Studio RX. We're doing more and more work in data science. Opened a new data analytics service, and it's tough to do analytics when the data is so skewed. I mean, pandemic is was like this huge. So we're often having to sort of forget even about the data from 2020 and look at compared to 2019 or 2018 to try to rebuild some trends, do some trends analysis, because 2020 is just not representative, and it makes it very difficult for a data scientist who needs more, the feeds off the volume of data, to have to pull out almost 14 months worth of data and say, we can't really use this data because it's not representative. And I think more and more with these different shocks and awes that we're going through, it's going to become a challenge to sort of normalize the data so that we can use it more intelligently to help us predict, because that's what we're doing all this, obviously, Sunil, is because we want to be able to predict, and ultimately my thing is prescribe. So if we can get to that, we need a lot of good data. So we're going to have to get better and more sophisticated, and it's something that where I'm personally invested, trying to help the small and medium businesses as well, not just the big players that have access to the big talent pools, but the smaller retailers as well, that are recognizing that even though they don't have a huge database, they still need to work with what they have. It could be their CRM, it can be their sales data, it can be all sorts of different things that they have. They've never really thought of that as being worth much. And now we're saying, well, no, you can't just let this be dormant. There's opportunities in that data that you need to look at and optimize to. It could even be for merchandising purposes. But as I was saying earlier, 2020 makes it more difficult because of the fact that in 2020 up to this point of 2021, the data is being so skewed. It makes it difficult for the business owners to have any really clear decisions based on that data alone. So they have to take in a much broader considerations. And that's why, again, the subscription service we're going to be doing, we'll be updating our own data and trying to sort of track the race to resilience in a lot of ways and show the different data points. Because the other thing we need to say, Sunil, is it's not equally distributed, right? So if you're in automotive, or you were in food service, or if you're in sporting goods versus fashion wear, your life has been very different over the last 14 months. If you're in the business of selling suits and ties, you didn't have the same experience as if you're selling bikes and canoes.
Yes.
So I mean, that's really the world we're in. So with tracking the data, we also have to take that all into consideration, because the average is not really representing anything anymore because of the fact that there's just so many variances.
Yeah, no, we on the book you talk about the e-commerce, right? You just saw on the news they say by the Depop, right? And then the so even I'm not like fan of the value village, right? But people go and buy there, right? So how it is not in the food, in the apparel business, it is going to change the way people like shop, right? The lot of things which are expensive, I want to, so I'm going to go with the second hand, which is
Well, I'm a big fan of that. I mean, in the book, one of the big frameworks is the sustainability flywheel concept, which is basically this idea that businesses, first of all, the definition of sustainability needs to be broadened to include social and economic sustainability, is not just environmental. And we talk a lot about the environmental in the book, because I interview Peter Backstrom, who's the head of innovation for H&M in Sweden, for their sustainability initiatives. So we went pretty deep there. But he's the first one that told me, you know, the concept of sustainability is very different depending where you are in the world. Some
Yes.
places, it's when you say sustainability, what they think, what they're hearing is social good. You know, what are you doing the right thing for the people, for the workers, for the suppliers, for the community? That's sustainable. Other parts more here, you know, we think sustainability right away. We think green. You know, what is it they're doing for what's the environmental assessment, and all this actually in my world that all comes together and add to that economic sustainability because it's all for nothing if you can't be a going concern. If you're not a financially sustainable, if you're not financially sustainable, then you won't be able to invest in environment and social. So that's the flywheel, and that's why. And I was people ask me, well, was I surprised by in the book? You know, anything I learned that I wasn't expecting? And I was concerned, quite honestly, when I started doing the interviews that people wouldn't care so much about finding ways like Depop and Etsy and to sort of build on sustainability because they would be so focused just on financial concerns because of the shock, you know, the economic crisis. And thankfully, most of them, if not all of them, it's had some sort of said this is more of an opportunity than a threat. It's an opportunity to build back better, to rethink our supply chain, to rethink our business model, to try to differentiate using a more sustainable mindset. Again, broad sustainability. And that's really what I was hoping for, because in January 2020, I wrote a piece for Retail Insider where I was saying, was reflecting on the previous decade, 2010 to 2020,
Yes.
which I said the biggest trend was direct to consumer. And I still believe that is still a very big trend, not to be just not to think that that trend is over, but overtaking that trend, I mean, still am expecting it was going to be sustainability, where in 2020 or now 2021, still a competitive advantage if you could show the consumer for roughly equal price that you're more sustainable, that you're more socially conscious or environmentally involved in all these, and you're taking care of people, planet, as long and your profit, and that would give you some extra margin. The thesis was about in 5 years or so, more people have caught up to that, and that'll sort of make you level with your competitors. So you won't be able to charge extra margin, but you won't lose margin either, because it'll be sort of, you know, where things even out. And then in 10 years, if you didn't have a strong sustainability, again, broad sustainability agenda, that you would be losing margin, because people would be saying, well, unless you're selling this a lot cheaper than the next guy, then I'm not, you know, I'm going to be more and more, and there'll be taxes and fiscal things as well, sort of penalizing those that aren't doing this anyways. So, but that 0, 5, 10 year, as everything else with the acceleration, gets compressed. It didn't go to 5, 10 weeks, but it's still, all these initiatives are being pulled forward. Whereas every day now, including the Etsy Depop announcement, but Adidas, the CEO of Adidas was, you know, talking to a group this week, I think in Business to Fashion, about their sustainability agenda, how they're pulling everything forward. Again, Peter in the book talks about that with H&M, and not just for themselves. H&M have actually even started a division, consulting division, where they help other companies with their supply chain, because they've invested so much money trying to figure it out for themselves, that they looked at this and say, hey, this is an asset that we have. We can they're probably not going to offer it to their direct competitors, but they can offer it to other organizations that are stuck with the same challenges. Say, how can we scale a large sustainable supply chain, which isn't completely done yet, but H&M is further along than most, so they can sell that knowledge now. So it's interesting. The business models are shifting. How we monetize is shifting. Everything kind of, you know, is kind of being I won't say pivot. I think it's a bit of a strong term, but definitely accelerated. That's the theme of the book.
Yeah, I know. In the book, I like that sentence. It says that thinking of a store should be the same way you think of a phone, right? So we have a phone, iPhone 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, right? So
Yeah.
more 2.1, 1.1, 2.0. So how like the retailers, the they gonna like they can adapt to that. They can transfer like that
Well,
fast.
exactly. You know, that comes back to the resisting change thing, and that idea of the thinking of the phone, the store as a phone. You know, do you think of it as a phone that you pick up and dial like that, or do you think of it as a smartphone? That was from Vibu. That was actually from Beta. That was his thing. Like if you're still thinking of the store, because I mean, I asked you, are you do you have troubles with the word store? You know, because it seems sort of dated. You know, do you even still call it a store? He's like, well, it's like, do you still call a phone a phone? You know, and that was the point. You know, this is if you're thinking about your store the same way as the time when it was created, where the idea of the store was created, then obviously you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Like if you were still trying to sell a rotary phone out there when everything is smart. So that was I thought was a very interesting analogy.
Yeah, well, no, no. My question is like big businesses like Walmart, Amazon, or H&M, those can adopt to those things. But small businesses, which is just running on a thin margin, just staying in the
Yeah.
business,
Hmm.
how like they can like they, either
That's a
they
good
go in.
question.
Yeah, so
It's
like
a good
bigger
question. It's so, and it's something,
big business,
Sunil. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
big
So,
business right now store. How like even changing the software cost is gonna cost like thousands of dollars, right? It's a pretty.
well, not necessarily. So, one of my accelerations, my personal accelerations during the pandemic, was I was traveling a lot pre-pandemic in for conferences, things like that, and it was actually in Asia in January 2020. Just as the tsunami was building, and I didn't even see it. But so when I came back here, and we went into lockdown, basically, uh, some people reached out to me and said, "You're going to be traveling a lot less. Why don't you, are you interested in getting more involved to support local business?" And I was on the an advisory of a group here in Quebec called the Quebec Innovation Council, and the GM had just stepped out into another role. So I was asked to come in, and what my motivation was to see how can we support small business. And we're doing the
Yeah.
same thing with the team at NFC in Nepal. But here in Quebec, I mean, I'm like, okay, so my motto changed to engaging globally, acting locally, because I recognize it's okay. I've been going all over the world trying to help, you know, commerce in general adapt. Now let's invest a little more time focusing here locally. And we started these innovation hubs around Montreal, showcasing local technologies that are very affordable that support small and medium businesses. To think that and the mission of these innovation hubs and this project in general was I don't want a business to close. Businesses open and close all the time, but I don't want a business to close because they were unaware that there was a technology that was available to them that they could have used and could have changed that outcome. That they thought that technology was only available to Apple and Amazon and Walmart, where it could be something as simple as appointment, especially when we were in restricting, or it could be targeted marketing, affordable, very affordable. It can be by SMS. It could be, there's a lot of different, so it's tough. I know I've been a small business owner. I scaled it into a larger business, but I remember how difficult, and I still am a small business owner. I mean, Studio RX is by no means a large business, so I can appreciate the realities of managing a smaller budget. But I think now, Sunil, with cloud computing mostly, and the fact that we're able now to get POS and e-commerce solutions for like $30 to $50 a month, which are pretty good. I mean, the idea of cloud in these kind of solutions, okay, you don't have all the features that the ones that are several thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're referring to for really big organizations, which by the way, take a long time to implement, are not as that easy to do either. If you're Walmart and you're implementing a new technology, it's a massive ordeal. If you're an independent small business that decides that starting next week you want to start offering appointment booking, it's probably going to be a little easier to pull it off. But that said, the cost of accessing these smart technologies has come down. The biggest cost, quite honestly, isn't the time, isn't the money, it's the time. If I'm a small business owner, I have to sort of rethink where I'm allocating my time and my energy and my employees' time and energy. Maybe there's 3 or 4 of us working in the shop, in the little store. Where are we spending all our time on the floor, or do we have more free time to do the other things that are more digitally enabled? For instance, managing, the social platforms, making sure that our e-commerce site is up to date and looking good and priced right, etc. So there's small, medium, large business. We're all facing the same challenges. Yes, the large business has a lot more resources, but also has a lot more challenges to deploy those resources versus the small business that now more than ever, and especially during the pandemic, there's a ton of startups that were created to address a lot of these problems. I saw a lot of energy go into this space. We're just saying, because it's almost a social mission now to help small business. We have in Canada Shop Here. We have different versions of that across the world. The Shop Here programs. It feels like a social good initiative now to help support your local business, and consumers will hopefully, I won't say go out of their way. I think we're past that. But if it's as convenient and this local business has done their part to make their product accessible and differentiated at the same time, then they're probably in a good position.
Yeah, no, I personally saw a lot of like small businesses there, but the only problem is that with the small businesses, they build a website and they assume that people are gonna come automatic, right?
Right.
It doesn't work. So they
No, no.
advise to give you $30, $40, you build a store in the Shopify, but you are not putting on product, you are not putting good pictures, you don't
Yeah,
have
yeah.
that is like one part is done, but the other part where you have to make sure your website is functional, visible, and people
Yeah.
searching. People will
No,
not.
you have to invest. I mean, it's another storefront, and this is something I worked with a co-op of, where there was 800 members at one time here in Canada, and this is like 10 years ago, where, we were telling them, think of it as you're opening another store. Would you open another store and not advertise it? Would you open a new store and not make sure you're doing everything you can to get people to walk through the door? A website is a digital presence is no different. And it's interesting now to see, and we measured this. It's not so much in the book, but it's something through the local initiatives I was involved. You saw a lot of businesses really just go onto social, use social, because for them that was sort of their web shop, because they figured that's where the customers were. So that was, and I think we measured in one market, and it was up to 90% of businesses that had some sort of had a social presence, and only 60% of them had their own dedicated website, because if they have limited amount of time, they're figuring, oh, I might as well go on the social. That obviously limits them a lot in what they can do. And we were proposing solutions for them to consider having their own websites, because they needed to. That unlocks a lot of other opportunities. It's not just the fact that you have a transactional e-commerce website that on its own, but if you want to do curbside delivery, for instance, curbside pickup, you need a transactional website usually to do that, unless you do it over the phone. So it unlocks a lot of other things. So the return on investment is probably bigger than what they first think when they say, well, there's only 10% of sales that are online in my category. Why would I invest all this money for 10% of my sales? Well, no, it goes well beyond that, the opportunity than the 10% of your sales. It's all about, as much about e-influence as it is about e-commerce. And then both of those things unlock a lot of value in a company.
Yeah, in Nepal, same thing. Like you will see in the even if I have two e-commerce company, people resist to go. They don't want to download apps. They just want to send the order over the messenger or WhatsApp, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
company was smart enough. They are bringing those customers to the app and download so that they can
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
send.
Yeah.
And the social
Yeah.
media,
And
you are
that's a
so.
good that's a good point. And I think the we've known this for a while now. I don't think a small shop should have its own app. I don't think people are going to download an app for the local bakery. They want to use other things, and look at the big announcements. Back to my point around how the large technology companies are pushing this forward because of their own investments. Look at all the announcements in the last couple of weeks between Google, Shopify, Facebook, and Shopify. Everybody's actually trying to come rally together to take on Amazon in a lot of ways. so that they make everything a lot easier, which is what especially the Alibaba model has going for it that we don't have here. We're much more sort of broken down. Alibaba, Tmall has everything sort of nicely centralized, and that's inspiring platforms like Daraz and Daraz and the others. But it's just this idea that we need to become a lot more consolidated because it's hard when everything is sort of in different places. So if we can have a more, the word is seamless, so we have this more integrated experience. Just if anything, we've seen it for live shopping was a big trend and still is. And even coming back to Vibu and Beta, he's gone really heavy into live shopping. You talk about that in the book because he was just pivoting to that a couple of weeks before I printed the book. So I had to update some things in the book for that. That's why it's self-published and self-printed, because I couldn't wait 6 months. The traditional, you've published a book, so you know this. I mean, it's 6 months, to you go through the whole cycle to publish a book in the traditional way. That's this in a world that's accelerating, that wasn't acceptable to me. So it allowed me to pull in things like what Vibu had told me 2 weeks or not even a week before I was printing the book. So it was all, it's not, it creates some imperfections as well. Doing it that way doesn't make it as clean a book as probably if I had it in a publisher's hands for 6 months to go through it and correct all the little things. But at least I hope it makes it more relevant. And that's another framework in the book where we talk about the relevance index. But I'm hoping that's part of the idea. And again, we're going to be building on it as time goes on.
Like update the book and then publish it again. So like it is more relevant and relevant.
Well, it's a subscription, right? The subscription. So when I sell the book for $12.99, it comes with 3 months of subscription. When I start selling a subscription, the subscription is going to be $5 a month. So basically the book is free if you think about the fact they're getting the 3 months of subscription, which is going to be exclusive content, in more interviews like the ones in the book, more of the data being updated, the frameworks, evolving and being built out as well as new data keeps coming in, and hopefully it makes the $5 a month investment worthwhile. And the idea is it's supposed to be sort of I'll use a good Nepalese term, the Sherpa for getting to that 50-50. How do business leaders think about and navigate the business world as they go to this 50-50 world?
Yeah, the adaptation, right? Even in Nepal, like we like almost an hour. So like if you say, when I reached Nepal in 2018, and then I was talking about the changing company, that everybody's saying, yeah, we need that, but nobody was really ready, right? They would say, yeah, give me a proposal and we'll talk about it. And then, so after COVID hit, and then everybody, oh my God, we're going to need that, right? And now they have no idea what to do. So we were called before, we were following them. Now they are saying, okay, what we can do. Right? So and
And I remember even in our panel that we did, you were talking about, there's the government construct, the laws around financial payments, all these things, that everything has to kind of come into play. And back to the crisis quote, I mean, it provokes change. It's governments, large organizations, banks, legal systems, everything has to sort of kind of adapt or perish. And obviously perish is not an option. So we need to adapt.
Yeah, even I remember when I designed like a for a barter pay, which is here in Canada, right? So I make a proposal, and then when we talk about they say barter pay, they say no, it's a cryptocurrency. Like, no, it's not, right? So like they are just and crypto is illegal in Nepal, right? So once we talk about the barter pay, they completely said no, we can't do it because it is illegal. So I said no, it is not crypto, it is bartering, right?
But yeah, blockchain is not crypto is built on blockchain, but it's not blockchain. And then look, El Salvador just announced, another emerging market. They made it an official, not official, but they're recognizing it as a
no official currency. In Nepal, like if you see, like now most of the transactions are because of the banks are closed, so you're using the Connect IPS, like bank to bank transfer, much easier. QR code is changing over, right?
Yeah.
So
that's I think that's the big opportunity, and probably my next book, quite honestly, is around the great acceleration in specific to emerging markets. Because as we saw with mobile in Africa, for instance, where they never even knew what a phone was and they went straight to mobile, and even now their banking is pretty much all mobile. What are going to be the opportunities in markets like Nepal and even India, which is has a lot of all these markets that are still very informal, as they had to formalize very quickly. Are these opportunities to jump over, sort of like Africa, to just forget the whole landline thing and just go right to mobile? Is there going to be an opportunity in markets like Nepal to sort of just jump over some of the stuff that we've done over the last 20, 30 years here and go directly into some of the best practices, and maybe even create some of the best practices, because they don't have all this legacy following in a lot of ways, and learn from Alibaba and Flipkart and Amazon or whatever, to go even maybe beyond that. So there's some really big opportunities, and I'm quite honestly impressed by. I have a lot of Nepalese students in my AIT class, and I mean Nepal is very progressive. I mean, a lot of the way they're thinking. I don't know. I know the way they're doing is a different thing, because there's still a lot of impediments. But the thinking, if you have people in the country that are thinking a certain way and can have a vision, I think it's just a matter of time that the forces come around and sort of provoke the change. And I was on a call just this morning with a nonprofit trying to electrify, or they've been electrifying these tempos. I'm sure you're aware of, what NOA and what they're doing, and Julie Power and these kinds of organizations. I mean, that's amazing stuff. They were doing this, a long time ago, but now they're going to get an opportunity, hopefully, to leapfrog and sort of be again, where they be at the forefront in a lot of ways. I hope, anyways. I think I see some very smart people, anyways, and some very inspired young people that want to make change happen. So
Yeah, with the technology and available technology and easy access, you can read everything on the YouTube, or you don't have to really go to the university. Even I wonder like what I'm going to study, right? Everything, even on in this summer like vacation, I'm going to say you're going to be my social media manager. My daughter is 11. She's okay. Why not? You can do it.
There we go. Get them working. Yeah, get them working. Yeah, absolutely.
You just understand because you're going to need that, right? So you can't ignore that influence, how it happens. So the same thing in Nepal. So much news like happening here. You buy some dress here in Canada, you put on the Facebook, and they're gonna buy the same dress in Nepal, right? So the influence in market is not like only whatever you get in Kathmandu. It is worldwide, right? You see in Australia somebody doing something, you're gonna do. I travel here to Montreal and Nepal, they're gonna go to India, right? So it's completely like.
Absolutely, no. We're living in a global world more than ever.
Yeah. So and then we talk about so many things, and one more question. So like, which way you gonna what is the take for your business, retailers, any businesses? What is take away of like how they need to, like, you talk about so many 50-50, right? But if there's something like, what you gonna suggest, like?
Yeah, well, that is the takeaway, is aim for that 50-50. You got to define it, you got to sort of understand it a bit before you can aim for it. But the idea is, if you can aim for this to bring your organization to a place that is comfortable and with its digital muscles as it is with its physical muscles, then it's going to probably be in a good place. So right now, like, majority of businesses are much more physical. So they're going to have to strengthen their digital muscles a bit more.
So one last question, like when I came to US in 2004, right? So like to do my MBA, and then I went to a store and like Publix, like it was in Florida, right? And then we went to shopping. There's a milk on the one corner and the bread is on the other corner. I said, why it is in Nepal? Usually in Nepal they put it together. I said, why? And they said it is four corners. Like they want to make sure you go all of eggs, it's all around the store. So while you are moving around, you see the stuff, you buy the stuff. Now with the digital registration, people are not going in the store, and then so how the retailers like when you buy online, you are focused moreover. Like even
your milk is next to your eggs online for sure, or one click, a fraction of a second away.
So when I go to the store, even you went to the Costco, like you are planning to buy just the milk or bread, and then you end up buying 500.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I love the Costco analogies. You go in for some bread and some bread and milk. You come out with a kayak and a pressure washer, but it's and lots of milk and bread too. And I worked with Costco for 10 years. That was where pretty much my retail school, and that was all about the treasure hunt and getting you to go all over the place so that
of course, I
you
was
would pick up
wondering
the
why.
kayak and so you'd pick up the kayak and the pressure washer at the same time. But it's an interesting question, Sunil, and it's especially in grocery. What is the role of those stores as they become? I don't know about you if you noticed with we talked earlier about how many people have gone on, were forced to go online during the pandemic to use e-grocery, and this system wasn't built for it, just couldn't sustain it. But when I go to my grocer now, I mean, maybe before pandemic, if I saw one picker, maybe two, that was already a lot. Now every other person on the grocery shop on the
More
floor
bigger.
is going around with the gun and the cart and filling out the things, right? And the store wasn't built for that, clearly, right? So now I'm getting frustrated because I'm being blocked area over the people that like, who's this store for? Is it for them or is it for me? Because clearly we need two different stores. So I think we're going to head to a place where we're going to get sort of these two different stores. Even pre-pandemic, we were already talking about the center of the store, the low consideration, recurring stuff that people don't really think about and just put in their cart. That can get automated out. I think that can show up at your front door. It can be put right in the trunk of your car without too much trouble. But there's still discovery. There's still a part of the grocery experience that we enjoy, discovering a new bread, a new cheese, a new meat, or whatever, and that's the sort of the exciting part of the store, which usually, to your point, is what's around the boring stuff, and that's what gets you to go to the four corners usually. That or the stuff that you really need, like the milk and all that. But so anyways, there's some reformatting going on. There's some new ways of looking at it. Automation. Friends in this space that are they're building the automation groups like Takeoff, who was a Venezuelan grocer who's now went and did his MBA at Harvard and decided to stay in the U.S. and build out because he had a big grocery business in Venezuela and could see this was happening, the automating, being able to automate out. So Juan Carlos decided to build Takeoff. Now it's taking off quite literally. He's got a bunch of projects on the go. Sobeys, Loblaws, all of them are investing in all of this as well. In the meantime, they're partnering with Instacart and the others, trying to figure out what's what. But yeah, so it's an interesting. There's no magic formula, but if they're another good example. If they're heading to 50-50 world, then they'll probably, they won't land exactly there, but they'll be in a better position than if they stay the way they were in 2019.
Yeah, exactly. When I go to Costco, there's two Costco. One is close to my house. One is an unlimited for. But I go to the further store where they have the self checkout. Right? I don't want to like be in the lineup and grab the
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay.
You can go like I don't know like
Yeah.
people.
Self checkout is a fascinating thing too, which is also accelerated like crazy.
You
My
go to the
friends from
same store,
IGD,
you feel comfortable,
yeah,
you
they
feel faster, you feel like more like you don't have to like somebody in front of you like taking sometimes taking forever, right? So it's yeah.
you're not a patient guy, Sunil. You're not a patient guy.
No, I'm not like that, but like
I
sometimes
know.
like
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. But and I'm finding it interesting, quite honestly, that they're investing in the self checkout because I know the return on investment and that stuff is apparently incredible. Apparently, you'll Costco will pay for that self checkout in like 6 months. It'll be paid for because of the volume they get to they go through it and the savings that they incur. But I was expecting the retailers to maybe hold out another year or two to go towards more the Amazon Go sort of checkout that we're going to see more and more. It's still very expensive and not accessible, but it's going to happen quickly. But the IGD just did a good report on that. I commented on yesterday too, because they were showing all the different groups that were going into, even dollar stores are doing self checkout now. So Dollarama's got into self checkout, all the grocery stores, Costco, all these other ones. So, these are amazing operators. I've seen them from the inside. They're all about efficiency. So they've seen something there. It wouldn't be the thing I would have saw, but I mean, at the same time, I guess they're recognizing and they've accelerated. And that probably also has a lot to do with what we were saying earlier, the challenge of getting staff. So, and or at least the staff they do have, they want to put them in positions where they're going to add more value than just picking something up and scanning it.
Yes,
Oh,
it's much easier. Okay,
all
so
right, Sunil.
thank you so much. It was nice talking to you, and it is a great book, and then it is available on your Studio RX website. And
Yeah,
this,
studiorx.world or studiorx.ca. They're both
and the
you just
price.
click on the Great Acceleration and you'll get there. I decided to stay away from Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Google Books. I want to be able to interact directly with people that I could have maybe sold more books that way, but I prefer the idea of being able to engage directly with the readers and keep them up to date with what we're doing. So that was a conscious choice. Not that I wasn't able to sell on anybody can sell on Amazon, but it was the idea of, yes, it's a little more friction to get them to go to studiorx.ca or .world to get the book, but it allows me to have a closer relationship, which I think is more important to me than selling a lot of books.
Not only engage with the book, you engage with your company, right? And then whatever newsletter and things you update, then you keep studying that, right? So people gonna get engaged. They're gonna be
Well, that's
connected.
what I teach. So that's what I want. I gotta practice what I preach.
Yes.
Namaste, Sunil.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for everything and your continued friendship and support. And look forward to hopefully us maybe being in Nepal together at some point in the
Yeah,
future.
I'm thinking
Or
to go
Toronto. Probably
Toronto.
easier.
Yes, yeah.
All
So
right.
I'm planning to go in December. I got a lot of stuff to be done, right? Because it is
Yeah.
the closer over there. So hopefully by in December. Take care, Lucas. Have a good day.
All right. Be well. Take care.